Welcome to Independent Sources. I'm Vianora Vinca.
And I'm Garry Pierre-Pierre. Violence in Thailand has reached boiling point, as heavy fighting and explosions were reported in specific areas earlier this week. Red shirt protesters have virtually paralyzed Bangkok as the group demands that the current government be disbanded and replaced through democratic election. The protests have been bloody, and the death toll continues to rise. Among the wounded and dead are 5 journalists.
On this edition of Independent Sources, we take a look at the growing tensions in Thailand and why it has spurred Reporters Without Borders to action.
We talk about the recently appointed Nigerian president. Will he have to live up to his name as he attempts to run the country?
Then we profile a website for citizen journalists making their voices heard around the globe. We'll have those stories and news of the week right after this.
Cannot underestimate or understate the value and importance of what the ethnic media brings to this conversation, which is they become our messengers to people in their own languages, as well as to reaching the more hard-to-reach populations, because they're not reading the daily news that may or may not be reporting on something. They're reading their newspapers. And we realize that, and we know that, and we have to honor that. And so, for me, it's really important that we recognize the importance of that relationship.
The makeshift rocket launchers and groups of protesters huddled behind sandbags are a stark reminder of a dark time in Thailand's history. Monday was the 18th anniversary of the last major eruption of violence against the government, aptly named Black May. That popular protest left 52 officially confirmed dead and was followed by a strict military crackdown. Now, history grimly seems to be repeating itself with 60 confirmed deaths during these latest protests. The recent assassination of a popular red-shirt military leader has sparked further violence, and some fear there is no end in sight. With me to discuss the current situation in Thailand is Tala Dowlatshahi of Reporters Without Borders, and Andrew Lam of New America Media is also joining us via Skype from San Francisco. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew, I'd like to start with you. You wrote recently that if George Orwell were alive, he might find the battle for democracy in Thailand reminiscent of his masterpiece, Animal Farm. Describe what you meant by this association.
Well, I think because for a long time now, Thailand democracy has been a farce, a fiction that they think that they could get away with. But what the protesters are showing is the underbelly of what's really going on, which is the whole exclusion of rural people from the participation of real democracy. They had popularly elected 2 prime ministers in the last 5 years, and both of them had been, one has been sent into exile, the other one found to be corrupted, which means to say that the whole process of democracy constantly being undermined by the elite powers of the city of Bangkok.
Tala, let me ask you about what it is to work as a journalist in Thailand right now, reporting from the ground. Reporters Without Borders said that the journalists are facing violence that's been without precedent since the return of democracy. How bad are things exactly?
Well, essentially, Reporters Without Borders issues an annual list of predators of press freedom, and Thailand ranks among the highest in terms of being a draconian state. So there hasn't been democracy, as Andrew had stated earlier, for a number of years. Thailand is boasting a democracy, but clearly for journalists it's a very difficult place to work. In the last 5 days we've seen journalists injured. France 24 journalist was killed. A Japanese reporter working for Reuters was also killed. A number of broadcast stations that are working independently within Thailand have been shut down. Matachan, the newspapers, Thai daily newspaper, has also, a reporter was injured. So clearly the government is trying to censor all different independent voices out of Thailand, especially during this very critical period, the next 48 hours, where the red shirts and the government are expected to have a full head-on violent conflict.
You also reported that the red shirts have asked journalists to wear green armbands with the words "dissolve the parliament." Are journalists doing that, and what does that mean for their work and their safety ultimately?
Well, I definitely think that journalists are covering what the red shirts are doing in great capacity. You have international journalists, you have a lot of local journalists that are well equipped. The problem is that this government does not mind murdering people for the sake of ensuring that the monarchy and that the current prime minister stay in power. So this is clearly a violation, and Reporters Without Borders had stated this, of international law, which ensures the protection of any journalist against military action, including shooting or firing upon a journalist. So we do feel that Thailand, now being elected to the UN Human Rights Council, has an obligation, an international obligation, to uphold the law.
Andrew, you talked about democracy in Thailand having been a farce. Let's go back in time a little bit and talk about the prime minister who's been ousted in 2006, Prime Minister Thaksin. He was elected twice, last time by a landslide with the highest voter turnout in the history of Thailand. Was Thailand at that point on a more positive road towards democracy?
It is, but Thaksin, who was not from Bangkok, he's from Chiang Mai, a multi-billionaire, represented something rather different because he understood the anger and the hope of rural folks, and he basically managed to stir their passion. He was the first of all the prime ministers since before him to really install, health care program that's considered universal, to introduce, anti-poverty policy that elevated rural poverty and was enormously popular among rural folks, the peasantry. Unfortunately, he was also creating a new infrastructure that seek to undermine the power elite of Bangkok, which had been long in the ruling class, and therefore, created a tension that was inevitable. And he was sort of found guilty while he was in exile, while he was traveling overseas. There was a coup d'etat, and now he actually is stirring rural passion against by, asking the people who voted for him to demand for democracy. And a lot of people blame him for the current unrest. Unfortunately, people don't understand is that even without Thaksin, the Pandora's box has been opened, and the passion of the rural folks is not going to go away anytime soon. And the people who are willing to die in the middle of the street of Bangkok are going to be considered martyrs for a lot of people in the rural area.
The Middle Eastern media called the situation a civil war. You talked about a possible revolution. Where do you see the crisis going from here?
Yeah, I think that it's easy to mow down people with handmade, Molotov cocktail and spear made out of bamboos, but it's impossible to win over a whole swath of peasantry that now have had a taste of real democracy under Thaksin, for better or worse. And Thaksin, what he did was he had created unprecedented optimism for the rural population, and they perceive the possibility of upward mobility, of real representation in governance, and there's no way you can quench that desire, regardless of how much you can control by violence the means against protesters.
Tala, you touched upon the fact that media is severely censored and a number of websites have been closed. How big is the list of closed websites? And talk a little bit about how journalists are being intimidated.
Well, unlike Thaksin, the former prime minister that tried to bring in independent voices and the rural communities who were now expressing or had a voice, the current prime minister, Raja Java, is clamping down completely. 50,000 websites are not allowed to be viewed inside Thailand. The Thai government has also funded a new fund for 2011 of 1 million euros to make sure that the internet is censored. So clearly it's a very draconian process where the Thai government takes internet censorship very seriously, and they want their demands to be supported.
Andrew, in the last 30 seconds that we have, can you tell us some of the reactions that you're hearing from the Thai community in the U.S. on the situation in Thailand?
Yeah, I think the Thai community in the U.S. is a little bit different because I think most of the folks who come here are from urban areas. So I think the sympathy may not be along with the rural people who are wearing red shirts on the street. But in terms of real democracy, I think there is no doubt that there is sympathy for people who have been sort of been excluded for so long, and there are voices of support as well.
And we'll have to wrap it here. Tala Dowlatshahi and Andrew Lam, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now here's Abi Ishola with some other news.
Thanks, Vianora. Here's a look at some headlines from the ethnic media. An historic 32 black Republicans will vie for seats in the fall midterm elections. The Daily Challenge reports that the Republican candidates who were inspired by President Obama's victory will face two major obstacles during their bids. One, getting the black vote due to the overwhelming number of black Democratic voters. The other obstacle will be overcoming the Republican Party's image of being prejudiced and racially insensitive. From the Amsterdam News, people of color are publicly admitting their support for Arizona's new immigration legislation. In an op-ed piece, the paper's editor-in-chief, Eleanor Tatum, says some blacks feel illegal immigrants are hurting their chances of getting jobs, while some Hispanics who are here legally don't feel illegal immigrants should get an easy pass to becoming residents. Tatum says people of color should not support the law because it will hurt them for decades to come. From the Filipino Reporter, Undersecretary Thomas Aquino is asking the Filipino-American community to support a bill that will revitalize the Republic's garment industry. The Save Our Industries Act, introduced to the U.S. Congress, will create about 100,000 new jobs for Filipino garment and U.S. textile exporters. The Filipino and U.S. apparel industries have suffered from job losses and reduced trade due to inexpensive products made in China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and other countries. Press TV is the latest news organization looking to become the next BBC World. The 3-year-old station broadcasts over satellite cable and the internet. It is the first Iranian international news network to broadcast in English around the clock. The Forward reports that the station is following in the footsteps of Qatari-based news organization Al Jazeera. And finally, calling all seniors in New York, City Parks Foundation wants you to get fit in the park. New Yorkers aged 60 and over are invited to take free tennis lessons, yoga, and fitness walking at 11 parks across the city. The program will run until the end of June. All activities happen twice a week at each location. Those are just a few headlines from the ethnic media. Back to you, Gary.
Thanks, Abby. When he was sworn in as Nigeria's acting president in February, Goodluck Jonathan was a polarizing figure. Critics called the move unconstitutional and said it threatened the delicate balance between Southern Christians and Northern Muslims in the country. These fears have persisted even as Jonathan has taken on the full-blown powers of the presidency. It seems that Goodluck may have to live up to his name if he is to succeed. I recently sat down with Nigerian journalist Omoyele Sowore and Musikilu Mojeed to discuss the issue. Nigeria, the former president, the deceased, Umaru Yar'Adua, died, but his transition was quite messy. He failed to name his successor, to hand power to his successor. And for a while, there was no one in charge of Nigeria. Why was this the case? What happened there? Why did it take him so long to hand over power when he was so sick?
Nobody knows exactly when he died because he's not been seen in public since he was evacuated from Nigeria on November 23rd, 2009. But
2009?
Yes.
It was a year and a half ago almost.
No, I mean 2010. Okay. No, 2009. Okay. Yeah, 2009. This is 2010 we're in. Okay. So, yeah, so it's been several months, and there was no communication between him and the Nigerian public. His wife would not let anybody have access to him. There were several delegations sent to Saudi Arabia to his hospital to see him. They were never allowed. His vice was not allowed to see him. So it was just all kinds of political games and brinkmanship that ended last week. But the political leadership in Nigeria invented what they call the doctrine of necessity to put in his position his vice as acting president. So for some reason there was been some measure of orderly transition of power before his death was officially announced last Wednesday. So I think to answer your question briefly is to say that the wife and a cabal around him just used his existence or non-existence to do things that otherwise they would not have been able to do if they had disclosed his real condition to the Nigerian people. For example, they were signing budgets, they were awarding contracts, whereas the man was not in any position to take those kind of decisions. Okay.
Musikilu, Nigeria has been undergoing somewhat of a anti-corruption campaign. Is it surprising that at the end this came to play?
It's not surprising, of course. You're talking about the anti-corruption campaign, you know, which a lot of people in Nigeria believe died, you know, immediately the deceased president came to power in 2007. And if you recall, the head of the anti-corruption agency, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, was handed out of office, and he currently lives on exile in the United States. So a lot of things have gone wrong. There has been this lack of political will to, you know, execute the war against corruption. So there have been a lot of brinkmanship. You know, the president had been healed, and because he was ineffective because of ill health, those who surrounded him maximized that opportunity to fleece the nation, to steal as much money as they want. So I think it was just an extension of the corruption that had engulfed the Nigerian society, that people had on using the ill health of the president to continue to fleece the nation, to steal from the public tier. So it's not entirely surprising.
Okay. Omoyele, you know, Nigeria is a country that's rich in oil. It's a member of OPEC. And yet, you have gas shortage, electricity shortage in Nigeria. Now, the current president, Goodluck Jonathan, and that's his real name, faces a daunting task. Is he up to the challenge to turn Nigeria around?
Well, if experience was anything to go by in terms of his leadership capability, he has none of those experiences that had been tested over time or under stringent conditions to show that he's capable of doing this. He's actually been a vice all his life, deputizing for somebody. Like somebody would say he's a deputy to his wife, even at home. That's
always the case, but that's another story.
Anyway, you know, what that tells you is that nobody has tested him before, and he's not been tested to the extent that you can say, well, you can vouch for his capability to run Nigeria, to solve all these problems that have been around for 50 years. But, you know, there's renewed optimism that, you know, things might begin to happen if this man who was deputy before, who has seen everything that went bad, can actually take, you know, the opportunity that is there, the public goodwill to do the right thing. But if you ask me, can he do it? You know, I can vouch for him because it's part and parcel of the same political elite and gang in the country that's been responsible for the problems we're talking about.
But speaking of political elite, I mean, Mr. Jonathan is from a small tribe, minority tribe, and there are a lot of speculation in Nigeria that because of that, he may not have the support to really carry out his mandate, the challenges that facing Nigeria. What do you think?
The speculation is that he wants to run, and people are saying that he's not likely to get the support of the political establishment, especially from the north. Mr. Jonathan is from the south of Nigeria. He's from the Ijaw ethnic group in the south of Nigeria, where the bulk of Nigeria's oil is.
Sure.
So
the Delta region.
The Delta region.
Okay.
So Mr. Jonathan is from the south. There is this unwritten code in Nigeria where power is alternated between the North and the South. Okay. The president between 1999 and 2007, Olusegun Obasanjo, was from the South. So Yar'Adua came on to take the turn of the North, so he was supposed to be there for 8 years. So now he's dead, and Jonathan has taken over. And indications are that Jonathan himself wants to run, and people are saying he's going to break this
Does he
code.
have the support? Does he have a widespread support? Can he win
well,
outright?
that is difficult to say, because a lot of people are speaking up saying if he runs, that is going to break the unwritten rule. But then, for me, if he runs, that means it's not likely to be effective in reforming the electoral system. If he doesn't run, he's likely to do the right thing. Now he's been able to fire, he has fired, he has removed the head of the electoral agency. But if he runs, if he wants to run, he's likely to put his own man there who is going to do his bidding. So there are a lot of talks. A lot of people are advising him not to run, and we don't know how that is going to play out.
I know this is a broad question and very probably very difficult to capsulize, but can Jonathan, in your opinion, Omoyele, take over Nigeria? Can he really tackle this problem that is Nigeria?
Well, Nigeria is not as complex as people give you the impression. It's actually a very, very easy place to run. Because if Yar'Adua, for example, who was without kidney, unable to do anything, has been in ill health, can run Nigeria for 2.5 years. You can imagine what will happen. Anybody else can run the place. I'm sorry to say this in public, but it's true that Nigeria has been run by morons, for a long time. You
mean incompetent?
Incompetent morons, some of them functional morons for a long time. And so actually Jonathan has a PhD. Most of the people who ran Nigeria before now, most of them are, first.
So you think he's up to the challenge? He can do it?
If he wants to do the right thing, I think he has the intellectual capacity or even the physical capacity to run Nigeria. The conditions, the bar for running Nigeria is very limited. So it's a little bit even above what we used to have. So, but again, it's dependent upon the Nigerian people to determine how they run and not the people who run the place. And I wanted to correct the impression about him being a minority. Nigeria has always been run by a minority of people. It's always been a clique, a cabal, or a small gang of people that run Nigeria. It's run as a fiefdom.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it at that. Omoyele Sowore, Musikilu Mojeed, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for bringing us.
We'll be right back.
The images from Haiti are heartbreaking. Homes, hospitals, and schools are destroyed. Families searching for loved ones, parents trying to feed their children. But we can all do something. We can help the American Red Cross as it delivers the food, water, and medicine that can save lives. Donate $10 by texting Haiti to 90999. Visit redcross.org or call 1-800-RED-CROSS. Thanks for your help.
And finally from us tonight, a website based in the Netherlands is increasing the reach of citizen journalists around the world. That online community is called Global Voices. The site posts stories in 15 languages and has members from nearly 200 countries. As we hear in this report from Marlene Peralta, the site is a voice for reporters in more ways than one.
After I graduated from college in Kansas, I moved to Uganda to work for a nonprofit organization there, and I was trying to learn everything I could about African politics, and so I was reading this blog written by a man named Ethan Zuckerman, who, as it turns out, is the founder of Global Voices, and so from his blog I got interested.
Rebekah is just one of the more than 200 bloggers from around the world who actively contribute to the online community Global Voices.
When Global Voices was created, we never set out to create like a huge global community. It started as a small blog, a project of the Berkman Center at Harvard University. 2 people started the project, and then more got added on, more and more got added on. We hired some editors, and then it just grew, rather explosively in the past couple of years.
I think what Global Voices does is incredibly important in terms of just getting the stories that a lot of mainstream media organizations can't get. The person who covers the entire region of Eastern Africa for the New York Times or BBC is based in Nairobi. So if you want a story about Sudan, they're basically using a lot of secondhand information.
Because of its unique perspective on global issues and media advocacy, Global Voices stories have often been picked up by mainstream media.
I've personally been contacted by different news organizations for interviews. CNN asked for my thoughts about blogging and the gay bill in Uganda.
I'm surprised to hear you say that there are gay bloggers in Uganda who are speaking out.
It's basically a bill that would take homosexuality, which is currently illegal in Uganda, and put a lot of other constraints around, for example, spreading information about homosexuality or knowing a friend of yours is gay and not reporting them to the police.
This online community has grown into more than just a website. It recently became an independent nonprofit organization.
We have a project that's called Global Voices Advocacy. A lot of the countries that we follow don't have freedom of expression, and especially not on the internet. There's a lot of censorship, a lot of bloggers who are threatened. Advocacy is a project where we try and monitor what's happening, these attacks on bloggers in different parts of the world, but also try and offer support and solutions to bloggers who are facing these threats.
Global Voices' eventual goal is to create more original content and translate their work into more languages of those communities who lack a voice.
We don't have an office. We work virtually. My closest colleagues, one of them is in the Netherlands, one is in Trinidad, DC, they're all over. And I don't think it's something you could necessarily do with any group of people, but we happen to be people who really love technology and love the internet and feel very comfortable communicating by email.
For Independent Sources, I am Marlene Peralta.
That's our show. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.
In the meantime, be independent-minded.